My grandfather passed a month ago, shortly after my 21st birthday. My dad left when I was 7, and my mum passed away when I was 11, shortly after my grandma. My granddad took me in straight away despite his age, even though he was still mourning both his wife and daughter. Though still deadly sharp, his physical condition wasn't great in his last few years. I'd express my worry for him sometimes, but he'd always tell me to get lost and assure me he'd see me through till 21. He was the light of my life. When he died, I didn't shed a tear. It's hard for me to explain why, but he was still giving sass on his deathbed, pinched my arm, and told me to not cry because he wasn't crying. After I left, I received a text from my aunt later that evening that she was disappointed at me for not being visibly mournful, and apparently him telling me not to was a very poor response. I ignored this since we were all grieving. I didn't return to the house for 3 days to avoid being alone again. When I did return, I found the shelves empty, bits of furniture missing, and photos taken from the walls. I confronted my aunt immediately, who after some arguing returned most of what was taken. Maybe she didn't think I'd notice, but not only had she taken both my granddad's and his dad's service medals, but she had also sold them. Luckily, I found the selling post on Facebook quickly enough, and the man who bought them was happy to return them to me. I refunded man and don't plan on asking my aunt for repayment since I'm just so glad to have them back in the first place. I did not confront my aunt about this. The funeral arrives and I'm straight away hounded for going through with a cremation. I keep telling her that it was my granddad's decision, not mine, but apparently, this contradicted his Catholic values. I'm an extremely mellow person, but this continued into the gathering afterward. She told others how selfish I was for not letting her take any of his belongings and how she thought I pushed him into signing his house over to me. I was soon invited to sit among a table of some of his old friends, at which my aunt was sat too. I tried to not pay her any mind, but the conversation soon devolved and she slipped up and told the table that I hadn't even let her take a single medal. I lost myself at this and erupted into a slurry of profanities. My aunt immediately starts crying and I seize the moment to call her out on her selling the medals in the first place. I'm not sorry for the things I said to my aunt, but I'm deeply ashamed of my behavior given the setting. Some people have approached me offering support, to which I have not replied, but I have this immense feeling of guilt in my stomach that I can't shake. I know for sure that I overreacted, but am I an idiot? Should I apologize to each attendee individually? I'm in a terrible way at the moment, and my mind is all over the place. I feel like I need someone from the outside to tell me what to do. Not the idiot. I'm so sorry for your loss, but everyone mourns in their own way. Some people react by crying non-stop, others bottle it up and erupt days, weeks, years later. It seems like you are in the latter category, and your reaction to your aunt's behavior definitely cements that. You did as he asked, and her behavior is inappropriate and selfish. You're not an idiot for erupting on her, and honestly, if everyone cares for you, you shouldn't need to apologize, it was a natural reaction. Not the idiot. I mean, you just lost somebody very important in your life, you had all the right to grieve. Your aunt going to the house while you were away and taking things without asking and trying to sell them is way past the limit in my opinion. Selling your grandfather's service medal is a horrible thing to do. I would definitely keep that as a memory of him. I know as my grandfather served in the military as well. You had every right to be mad and to tell her off, so don't let it get to you too much, you already have enough on your mind as it is. I'm sorry for your loss and I hope things get better for you. Not the idiot. I didn't cry at my mother's funeral. I was too numb. I cried buckets in the days and weeks afterward, and over a decade later, I still cry. Nothing about a funeral is normal in terms of how people act and feel. To be honest, I think if anything, the deeper the grief and loss and shock, the less likely some people are to break down in tears. It's more surreal. Asking for blunt honesty here because I can't deal with this drama right now, so just tell me if I've been an idiot, and if so I'll go and apologize. I'm currently planning my mother's funeral on behalf of my siblings, they live overseas and are not here yet. My mother and father were divorced but were on good terms. In particular, my mother was close friends with my father's new wife. This woman, my father's current wife, has an ongoing dispute with my wife. They have a long history of bad blood between each other. Both of them have said extremely hurtful things to one another. Obviously, I think my wife is less of an idiot between the two, but both are definitely wrong for saying the things they have. Anyway, even though I really dislike this woman, I have to invite her to my mother's funeral service because 1. She's my father's wife, and 2. She was close friends with my mom. My wife was livid at finding out about this and insists I put my foot down and not let her attend the service. So for 2 long days, she constantly nags me about this, bringing it up every hour. I keep telling her the same thing about why she needs to come. I try to compromise by saying, if my wife is so uncomfortable she doesn't need to attend, and I won't hold it against her. She refuses this as she wants to be there to support me. So a few hours ago she brings the topic up yet again, and I lose my temper. I tell her, paraphrasing, just shut up already. You don't get a say in this. You don't get to dictate my mother's funeral, for Christ's sake. Just leave me alone already. I did not say it calmly. I yelled it and was definitely angry because I'm busy organizing my mother's funeral. She has gone off crying and I'm left wondering if I went too far. I can't deal with this nonsense, and I'm just going to accept whatever judgment is given and go with that. Not the idiot. I do think what you said and the fact that you yelled it is harsh. I'd normally say everyone's the idiot here, but you are likely grieving and you are under a lot of pressure, all this on you, plus personality issues. I would have expected your wife to put on her big girl pants just because it's a funeral, because that's what normal people do. If you feel up to it, I do think you should probably apologize and try and explain it calmly, because she is your wife, but fingers crossed she tries to meet you halfway and stop making this about her. Not the idiot. However, what's with this invite your father's wife to the funeral? Unless you are a rock star or a president or someone like that, people don't get invited to funerals. They just show up. You don't need an invitation. Is there a minister or social worker involved with helping with the service that could talk with your wife about ways she could be more supportive to you? Perhaps someone else could get her to understand how inappropriate she is being. Not the idiot. Your wife needs to stop stressing you out and stop bothering you over something stupid, especially since you've told her multiple times why your father's wife can attend. Just because your wife has a personal vendetta against your dad's wife doesn't mean your mother did. She needs to put that behind her for the time being, because at the moment during funeral preparations it just seems petty for her to do this. I own a rather large business, and I'm the main breadwinner in our house. My wife babysits her sister's kids for cash, but is otherwise a stay-at-home person. We don't have kids. I come home at 6 in the evening, and we barely have time for each other anymore. We mostly talk while in bed before sleeping. I had a secretary that I got along really well with, but she recently quit due to health issues. So it clicks in my head that I could hire my wife as my new secretary, that way we'd spend a lot more time together and she'd have an income at the same time. Win-win. I run it past her and she agrees. The job basically consists of fetching documents, making calls, and brewing coffee, all of which she can easily do. She makes the same as the old secretary and less than nearly every other employee. Ever since our relationship has improved, we spend a lot of time talking with each other, and I feel like our marriage is alive again. We also had love in the office, which is a fantasy of mine, but that's beside the point. So I thought everything was going great, but I hear from an employee that it's unfair my secretary is also my wife, and that's basically nepotism. Which is true technically. The reason I hired my wife as the secretary was because of a family relationship. But she isn't in a position of power, nor is she getting exclusive benefits or a higher paycheck, so I don't really consider it nepotism. I don't know why he's complaining. He makes double what she does, and it's not like she's his manager now. I call him into my office and tell him if he has a problem with my wife being my secretary, I'll gladly let him take her job, and he seemed to take the hint. Is this really nepotism? Am I an idiot for making my wife my secretary so we can spend time together? Not the idiot. You can technically call it nepotism, but that negative connotation doesn't really make sense here, since you are the owner of that business. If she can do the job right and you didn't fire anyone to get her that job, what is wrong with it? It's not a government position where the taxpayer is covering her salary. This isn't a public corporation in which the shareholders are the owners of the business. I don't see why anyone should have any issues with this, given that she is not incompetent and making other people's jobs more difficult. Not the idiot. It's your business and can hire whoever you want. The guy complaining has no idea how much time and energy it takes to run a business, and he can complain all he wants, but ultimately you will have to live with the consequences of potentially growing apart with your wife if you continue to work as you do. Honestly, hiring her to work at your company is the sensible solution to what ultimately leads a lot of people to separation or divorce. Not the idiot. If you own the business, then your wife basically does too as your marriage partner. It's not at all uncommon for both spouses to work in a business they own, in whatever roles suit them and the needs of the business best. If you were putting her in a role she was completely unqualified for instead of someone else that deserved that position, that would be more along the lines of nepotism. But having her be your secretary is totally fine. This has been an ongoing argument between my wife and me, but it resulted in a huge argument today, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm in the wrong. I think it's impossible for someone in my position to see my wife's point of view fairly, so tell me who's the idiot here. I'm also not interested in any relationship advice. Our marriage is fine, it's solely this topic argument that I'm interested in hearing your judgment on. So my wife and I have 2 kids together. But before I met my wife I had a daughter with my now ex-wife. My daughter passed away when she was 7, and the emotional toll of this destroyed my marriage with my ex-wife. We haven't said a word to each other in almost a decade, and I have no desire to speak with her anyway. I still own the same house as then, and I've pretty much left my daughter's room as it was. At first, it was just because there was no reason to, but now it's kind of like a memorial in some weird sense. I can't really explain the logic behind it because I don't think there is any. It just doesn't feel right to change her room. This has been the cause of the only arguments my wife and I have really had. The house has 4 bedrooms, so each of our kids has a room, we have a shared room, and then there's my daughter's old room. My kids know not to go in there and it's just left there. Occasionally I will go in there and read a book or just lie down on her bed. It's therapeutic in some weird way. My wife has always wanted to change the room. At first, it was because she wanted to study, but I refused, and eventually, she gave up. We're now talking about having a 3rd child, and naturally, she wants our new kid to have my daughter's old room. Again I put my foot down and said that wasn't an option and that our 2 older kids can share a room instead. She really blew up at me and told me she was sick of me holding on to the past. She was sick of me being unable to compromise on this. She was sick of feeling like my deceased daughter came first. She said a lot of things, but I think that basically sums it up. When she said these things I was really hurt. But I've had a few hours to think it over, and I think I might be the unreasonable idiot here. It's not fair to make my kids share a room because I won't let go of the past. It's not fair to have a memorial that reminds my wife that she wasn't my first love. You're the idiot. You don't have enough bedrooms for your potential children. Assuming you can afford it, it is expected to provide children their own bedroom. Exceptions to this are made by child protective services and such, when there is a lack of financial ability, not when you have a spare room you refuse to share. Create a small area of the house to remember your daughter. Maybe someplace you can see every day. Help her memory live on by reading her books to your other children and telling them stories about their sister. No idiots here. I'm sorry for your loss, it must be difficult. But your growing family's needs really have to come before the needs of your dead daughter. I know it's difficult, but you have to give up this room for the good of your family and marriage. No one says you have to forget her, but her ghost doesn't need a room. Put up her photograph in a special place in your home. Keep her special things in a box that you can open from time to time. There are all manner of things that you can do that don't require a mausoleum in your home. Let this room become a place of joy filled with the laughter of a 3rd child. No idiots here. I can't imagine what it feels like to lose a child, but keeping a room as a memorial like that isn't healthy. It actually hinders the healing process. I'm not saying people have to change it right away, although some may want to, but keeping it long term will hold you back from moving on. It may also cause your other children to resent you if they have to share a room, so the room can remain unchanged. If you want a memorial, why not plant a tree or something for her? My friendship with Dave, he's been my mate for 15 years, we've been through some things together, and he's always been my most solid friend. He's always been prone to get jealous around me with girls, and whichever women are in our lives, either separately or together, he will get very weirdly competitive. However, for various reasons both of us have been single Pringles for longer than we've been in relationships, but he's honestly like a brother to me. He's been a shoulder to cry on when my mum passed away, I helped him buy a house, he bought me my first dog, etc. My girlfriend Safia, I've known her since last November. My gym buddy had been pushing me to meet her, and despite me not really wanting a girlfriend, it happened one day, and we hit it off big time. I've known her for 6 months, and I can tell you right now she's the one for me. She is never in a million years the type of girl I'd go for. She is completely out of my league. Lip fillers, makeup obsessed, runs around making friends with cats on the street, loves pink anything, calm as anything, has a degree in biomedical science, works for an organization that advises the National Health Service, and is sharply intelligent. When I introduced Dave and Safia to each other I was sure they'd love each other. But nope. Despite me thinking Safia is the most interesting person to walk this earth, Dave has been nothing but hostile to her and is openly rude. She first took it well and privately I apologized profusely to her. Asked Dave what his issue was and he called her silly, stupid, etc. Since then it's progressed into him openly calling her Blondie, she has dark hair, him telling me she's after my money, him telling me that I need to break up with her because she's only using me and someone like her would never want to be with someone like me. Safia has said literally nothing about him, and I know she has an insecure streak where she feels like people don't like her as it is, so naturally, I've stopped seeing Dave as much. He's called me drunk last night and told me how I've let this silly girl gets in between him and I. I'm honestly done with his guy. Am I doing the right thing by severing this relationship? In the last 6 months, my life has been getting better and better, and coincidentally I've been seeing him less and less. Is disrespecting my girlfriend is the nail in the coffin as far as I'm concerned, but my other friends think this is a classic case of me being caught up in a shiny new relationship and not seeing the bigger picture. Not the idiot. It's less about the literal relationship and more about the principle of it. If he has no interest in being supportive of the things and people that make you happy, he's not interested in your well-being. Therefore, he's not being a good friend. Maybe if he gets it together and is more supportive, it's worth working out in the future, but it's more important to spend time with people that make you happy and support you than those that don't. Not the idiot. And even though Dave is being quite rude, the message might be something worth listening to. You're in the honeymoon phase of your relationship and are bound to ignore possible flaws in a person. He knows what's best for you, and I think you should try to see where he's coming from. Don't cut ties, man. Just don't do it, especially with a 15-year friendship. They are a rare breed these days, and if things ever hit the fan in your relationship, Dave would be there to pick you back up. Not the idiot. Your friend sounds like a complete idiot, sorry. Without the background, I'd say it's possible he has a weird feeling about Safia and tries to protect you from her, but you're obviously very happy with her, and you said he's been weird whenever you were seeing someone, right? Sounds like he is either into you himself or just has a huge attention issue. I had a friend of 10 years once who acted similar to this once I got together with my partner. If he can't accept that you moved on from single life and are spending time with your girlfriend now, it's his loss.